Well, no, just because this is it's an election year. This is going to be a big thing in the U.S. and presumably, I don't know. I'm just guessing. There may be like one or two news stories marginally related to the election over the course of this year. There might even be like one or two just inflammatory statements made.
So I actually thought about this the other day. And my thinking was, hey, we do this podcast so it goes up on Tuesdays. The US votes on a Tuesday. So if next November we wanted to talk about politics, we could have a politics special.
Okay.
And it would go up on election day, and that was the only thought I had ever had about it.
Of course, now we're the media, though. This is part of the problem. Like, so we have to, if we're gonna exert political influence, we're like a year late. We got to catch up. We got to be all political and stuff.
We have to talk about exclusively nothing but politics.
Exactly.
For the rest of 2016 or until November. And then we can go back and check in and see how SpaceX is doing.
Right.
Unless Elon Musk goes and endorses a candidate or something.
Ooh.
Talk about that.
Well, there we go. Actually, sure. There we go. If Elon, well, no, not endorses again. I thought you were going to say if he runs. Sure.
I mean, I think we'd all vote for Elon Musk if he ran. I think we'd vote for any position. Really? You don't know if you'd vote for Elon Musk?
I don't know.
I would. I mean, it'd be kind of like voting for. I don't know if he could ever win, to be honest. I mean, maybe. I'd have to see his polling data.
I don't know what his policies are aside from space is awesome.
I am perfectly willing and happy to talking about politics. Actually, which we are already doing. So therefore, now I can clarify to say I'm perfectly willing to talk about politics. I am very open with my political stances and discussions. And I'm really happy to talk to anyone about politics. So if you would like to talk to me about politics, Kevin, then I will happily respond.
Well, so here's the thing. I don't know that I have anything to say about politics. I'm just more interested in kind of the idea of... I've noticed that it feels like there are an awful lot of issues that are very, very polarizing.
Yeah.
And I noticed this when I was making YouTube videos. I noticed this when I tweet things out or whatever, is that I find myself deliberately censoring myself in expressing a viewpoint on an awful lot of different things. Just because I'm afraid that, not necessarily that I'm going to lose people that disagree with me, but that I'm going to offend people accidentally through lack of imagination or on my own part through just not understanding the ways that something could be misinterpreted or perhaps legitimately interpreted based on different experiences or things like that. And so there's like this whole, and it seems to be growing, there's this whole range of things from just, this is an off limits topic to discuss anymore. I don't feel like most people are that way. If I look at my Facebook feed, I think people are pretty cool talking about politics. I mean, it used to be the case that it was just kind of general. The general manners is that you never talk about religion, you never talk about politics. You would talk about them perhaps privately with your family or with very close friends, but that's it's not the subject for public discourse. That it's impolite, and I don't think that's held to be true anymore.
Yeah, it's certainly not for politics. And I think politics drags a lot of religion into it nowadays. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. Because I'm very much a believer in the separation of church and state. But on the politics side of things, I think that a good discussion in society about politics is a good thing. And I'm sort of glad that we've moved away from having it be a taboo subject to be something that is generally talked about on a fairly frequent basis. That being said, I'm not a super huge fan of the over-medialization of politics. Like the 24-hour news networks and such, like CNN and Fox and MSNBC and stuff, who literally just talk about politics 24/7, are just roaring to polarize and bring people on from all facets of life to try to get like interesting and weird responses so they can get ratings. Not a fan of that, but like the discussion of politics in general on sites like Twitter and like Facebook and stuff like that can be good. But I'm not super certain that they're much better. So I am a fan of talking about politics in general, but I'm not certain that the methods and the ways that they get talked about nowadays are particularly useful. I suppose.
I think I would go as far to say that I don't think that... I mean, I don't know whether or not there should be a taboo or whether it should be considered impolite, but I don't think the discussions of things like politics and religion are particularly helpful in public forums.
Yeah, I mean, religion...
Not that you're perfectly free to tweet out or throw stuff on your Facebook wall about, your Facebook wall. That was an old thing to say.
I mean, you still have a Facebook wall.
Don't you? Is it a wall?
The wall still exists.
Okay.
That's still an in-use term.
I don't think it's an in-use term. It may still technically be the wall, but I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily conducive because I think, there's the kind of the trope at this point of people having to deal with their racist relatives posting stuff on Facebook or, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just kind of this is what everybody's experience is that they're discovering that Great Aunt Kathy, supports something that they don't support, and then they get into an argument with their Great Aunt Kathy over Facebook and things like that. I think that on the one hand, yes, if you're talking about issues and trying to figure out, how we go about solving real problems, then that's great. I don't think that. But there is a cost. I mean, there is not a cost, but there is a risk that when you engage with someone on a possibly contentious topic, that you damage an otherwise healthy relationship with that person. And I feel like I'm much happier having because I know that I have plenty of friends with whom I disagree very strongly on particular issues. I'm much happier simply not broaching those topics, so long as they're comfortable doing the same, provided, obviously I'm not going to go ahead and, hang out with Hitler because he's really good at, playing Kerbal Space Program. This is an example. All right.
Oh my goodness.
There's an extent to which people's policies can't be ignored, but I think when people have policies that you may disagree with but don't have a significant impact, that keeping those kind of off of the table for a particular discussion is kind of healthy for both parties, and you can perhaps deprive yourself of really good relationships with people that you disagree with because you get stuck in a particular issue. And I don't feel like, and I think especially on public things, kind of Twitter being probably the most public of platforms, it's very easy to not, even when you tag someone, you're not directing, you're shouting in their general direction, and then anyone else can decide to sort of engage with that, and there's a real risk of losing potential relationships and helpful discussions with people on perhaps different topics on which you can actually come to some sort of consensus or at least have a reasonable discussion. And so, I don't know. I feel like the don't talk about politics thing may have been a good idea at some point.
Okay. I will grant you that there are certainly topics where that's true. And I think the realm of where that holds true, and that holds true across basically all of the religious topics and some political topics, is that morals. So when you try to discuss like morality issues with people, you're much more apt to strike significant chords with them,
right?
And engage a much more visceral response. So if you're talking about topics like should there be religion in schools, or should it be presented A and B and options, and should it be what's the deal with abortion and all that type of stuff, you're going to really hit chords with people who have a moral compass that points different directions, right? So people are going to believe different things,
right?
And they're going to be very adamant about that because that's going to be some very core part of their being. Whereas if you're debating whether the right way to build a bridge or to build a hyperloop train is the way to spend this year's fiscal budget, that's not really gonna elicit any sort of core response.
Especially discussing with people who have no impact on on that policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's if my great aunt Sally thinks that it would be appropriate for us to build a Keystone pipeline, she's not going to go out and build it. So if I vehemently oppose it, it's probably just not worth talking about. Like if it's going to sever potentially good discussions, let's just not bring it up then. Obviously, yes, if she's going out there and building the pipeline herself, then maybe I do have a responsibility to speak up and say, I really think you should knock it off. By the way, the pipeline, I have no idea. Like, I'm not informed enough about it to have any sort of opinion. It was just sort of an example. I'm not I'm not committing myself to a particular viewpoint in that example.
Because you have done no research.
I haven't. I have quite deliberately over the past kind of year or so tried to de-newsify and depolitify my life. Because I don't think it matters. Not that it doesn't matter. I don't think that my being informed actually helps. And I think that if it was a choice between doing that and nothing, then sure, I would do my best to stay informed, but I can be informed about other things where I feel that I can have more of a positive impact.
I mean, I've certainly tried to scale back my particular news intake, but I have good circles of friends who I almost talk nothing about, nothing except politics with. And even if there's not just politics, it's, makes up a good portion of our conversations, and being informed is a good way of maintaining those particular friendships and that I value. So, it helps, and I enjoy it in certain circumstances, And again, it all depends on the issue. Like, having issues about taxes is a great debate that I like to have with a particular friend. I mean, and I think I'd have quite some fun. I've never found anyone who has a different viewpoint than me, but the whole
there's a red flag there.
It's an echo chamber. I know, it's an echo chamber problem. But I don't have a friend who I've talked to who doesn't think that cell phone encryption isn't a good thing and that the government should have access to all of their files when they want it. Like, I haven't found anyone that I have friends with to talk about that issue. I really kind of would, because I think debating that type of stuff helps you think through your own arguments.
So I'm gonna say this out loud, but I want to preface it by saying that I think this is a very condescending attitude that I have. And that is that I think that, to kind of be a counterpoint to what I said before, there is when you were talking about people kind of clinging to their beliefs, particularly with regard to morality, and how that kind of makes up a core part of their being, I initially agreed with you, but I try and think about myself, and I try and think my goal as a person, as a thinking person with opinions, is to have very, very strong opinions, but to hold them very loosely and not identify with them, if that makes sense. So I will very strongly argue about the benefits and importance of encryption. But if you for some reason just said that this is absolutely necessary and we need to be able to decrypt and backdoor into everything, and you wanted to argue vehemently, and you wanted to call that opinion completely stupid. Heck, if you wanted to call me stupid, I'd probably be fine with that too. I wouldn't take that necessarily as a personal offense. And similarly, if people disagreed with my views on religion or abortion or kind of any of these really hot button issues, I don't personally, I hold my opinions, and I hold them very strongly, and I will argue very long, for a very long time, and very forcefully. But at the same time, if you manage to convince me that I'm wrong, it's not going to, I don't feel like you're chipping away at my soul. I don't feel like it's a personal attack when when you argue against a point that I may hold. And I feel like my attitude of just not wanting to engage on those hot button issues may be condescending, in that it is assuming that the opposing side does not have that same attitude. That perhaps it is inappropriate for me not to attack the opposing side on a particular issue because I am, I guess, treating them with kid gloves in a way.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. And I think this whole notion of not getting attached to one's beliefs and one's ideas actually translates really well into like the engineering fields and stuff. Like, you don't want to get attached to your ideas and your thoughts, and you want to be very open to being corrected and being overwritten if someone has a better argument. Because
no, don't overstate it. I don't even necessarily think that you want to make it easy for someone to convince you that something is better.
Well,
I think that you should try very, very, very hard to prove that your position is correct, because that ensures that when you do change your mind, that you have fought against it as much as possible. You know that if I couldn't figure out a way to refute this, it's probably more reasonable than just, this person who has a little bit more experience than me says I'm wrong, so I'm just going to go ahead and switch over and start believing in this.
Yeah, but then once you've made that switch over, you can't hold a grudge against the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to, basically say, okay, you've clearly made your point, your argument is too foolproof. All right, now I'll go along with you.
Yep.
And that's the end. That has to be the end of it then, until, of course, you come across someone new who has a different opinion. And then,
to be fair,
the whole cycle begins again.
I think in my case, generally, I will argue, and I've lost friendships this way, that I will argue very strongly against a particular point, and they will argue very strongly, and we reach an impasse, and we go, okay, we're done. And they're frustrated with me for not just admitting that they're right. And then I will go off and I will think about it for a few days, and I'll go, you know what? Yeah, I think they are right. And then I'll start espousing their views, and then they will be very, very furious. Why didn't I just capitulate at the time?
Just took time to digest.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I generally don't flip my views mid-argument. Perhaps I should, but part of it is that I feel like if I'm wrong, then I want to be absolutely sure that I'm wrong. I want to force you to convince me beyond any reasonable doubt in my mind that I'm wrong. And so I'm very hesitant to actually flip my opinion, at least until after the discussion has taken place.
Yeah, and I think that's very reasonable. People who get upset with that, I think, I don't know. That sounds weird to me, that they would get upset because it took you a little bit of time, but then you eventually agreed with them.
Yeah, but not at the time. I agree with them like days later, and yeah. And they just spent all this time arguing. When it turns out I agree with them, well, exactly. Cause and effect right there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only point I was just trying to make was that this isn't directly associated with politics. Is that it's in engineering and software engineering, is that you will have ideas and you will make things that
are
perhaps isn't that isn't the right way to go about it, and that you have to be very open and not personally attached to those ideas, so that way you can replace them and not feel like, oh, I'm the worst person ever, or you won't hate the people who, had that better idea. Right? That make the implementation twice as fast or whatever. You just know that, that the end result is that things worked faster, not that, oh, I was terrible.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think particularly in software, everything, I mean, even looking back at stuff that no one else has challenged, I can say, at least for my entire career, everything that I've written more than 3 months ago is awful.
Yeah.
And 3 months from now, the stuff that I'm writing today will be absolutely terrible as well.
Yeah. I mean, past you has died and was terrible.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's blame it all on that dude.
Yeah. And then none of this was on our topics list. Why do we have a topics list? We can clearly just talk about whatever we want.
Well, yeah, that is kind of the nature of this podcast.
So Marvin Minsky, who was one of the foremost experts in AI coming out of MIT, has unfortunately passed away. And he has won what is the most prestigious award in computer science, which is the Turing Award for his work in artificial intelligence. And it's always sad when someone who's won a Turing Award has passed away, because it means that like there's less people thinking about cool things in computers. I don't know. It's just he was a cool guy, and I'm sad that he's not thinking of cool things anymore.
I knew the name Marvin Minsky. I didn't know a lot of what he had done. I did look on Wikipedia. Apparently, Wikipedia is not particularly kind. They accuse him of having caused the AI winter for criticizing neural nets. And basically saying this isn't going to pan out. And then everyone went, okay, we're not going to investigate neural nets for a few decades.
Yeah, but he also built the first one.
Okay. But still, and he was like, this is not a good idea.
Yeah, but he built the first one.
Well, yes.
And then prior to this, like I could have told you that he was a pioneer of neural networks. I didn't know that particular fact about.
Well, this is because I'm the sort of deep researching expert that I am.
I didn't know he was criticized for like causing a huge holdback of the field by, you know, perhaps downplaying his own invention, because he did build, I forget what it was called, but he's widely attributed with writing the first neural network simulator. If he did then downplay his own invention, I can then sympathize with that, and perhaps maybe someone else should have.
I'm just parroting. I don't know. Okay, so I mean, obviously, it's very sad.
I don't know.
It is interesting though, because it does feel like a lot of. I mean, to your point though, there are a lot of kind of pioneering people in computer science research, and it feels like a lot of them are old.
Yeah.
Or have passed away.
Yeah.
Which I wonder, is that just a matter of the field being very saturated at this point? And so it's harder for us to notice, like, oh wow, that perhaps there are millions more remarkable visionaries now, and it's just more difficult for us to notice them because they're in fields where, you know, we may not intersect, or if in some ways perhaps the advances that we're making are not as remarkable.
They're far more incremental.
Right.
They're the tick-tock of, you know, Intel's slow march of CPU modernization. And they're the single commits that go in across all the different GitHub pages. And they're the little people who are making small changes to the Linux kernel that, you know, slowly build up over time.
Right.
The tiny little tweaks here and there that just add up.
Tiny little tweets.
I don't know. I think you're going to see Turing Awards that'll get awarded for. Recently, there was pretty big news, and I think we missed it. There was a pseudo-polynomial time algorithm for graph polymorphism. I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast.
I recognize most of those words, but I'd have to write it down and try and unpack it.
Graph isomorphism. Oh, okay. So what graph isomorphism is if you have any sort of graph, and I mean graph in the computer science term, where you have nodes and vertices, so you have like 3 nodes A, B, and C, and you
can't just say in the computer science sense. Okay, so you're talking about, oh shoot, what is a good not computer science analogy?
I don't know.
So you have math graphs that are, you know, plots and lines on axes.
Yes.
Computer science starts. You have this idea of kind of graph traversal, and
not certain that. Okay.
So the idea of graph traversal is you figure out, how do we find all of the things in this data that we're trying to represent.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, you would think about a graph as, you know, if you look at the United States, got all of these states, some of them are connected to each other.
Yeah.
Illinois is connected to Wisconsin and to Indiana, and so you can say that there is a node that is Illinois and has these vertices or paths to the surrounding states, and those surrounding states are also nodes. And so if you were going to try and write some sort of, you know, it's actually kind of an initial thing that you'll there are some algorithms for this. The kind of the traveling salesman problem is, how do you try and visit all of those states without repeating yourself? And so this is kind of what you use a graph to model, is you just describe all of these particular things and how they connect to each other. And so that's what you mean when you're talking about a graph in that sense.
Yeah. And what the graph isomorphism problem is that given any two graphs, you're asking, are these two graphs the same? So, does Illinois connect to Indiana, and does California not connect to New Hampshire, and all, possible combinations, so that make sure that all the states that should be connected are connected, and that all states that shouldn't be connected aren't connected. And so it turns out like the easiest way you can think about doing that is to literally just go check one by one every possible connection and see, does it exist? And should it exist for both of the graphs? You just treat one graph as the master and then check down the other graph, making sure that every, vertex or connection that should exist does.
So this got them their Turing Award?
No, I'm...
Because I was going to say, Alex, I think we might be able to get a Turing Award. That would have been my first approach to solving that problem.
Yeah, no. So that is the common way to...
Is this map of the United States the same as this other map of the United States? I'm going to check all the states and what all their boundaries are. That would have been my solution.
Well,
I think I demand my Turing Award.
So that's the graph isomorphism problem explained in simple forms. You're just checking to see, if one graph is equal to the other. And that's a simple way that you can do that. It's not a very computationally effective way of doing it. It takes quite a long time. In fact, it's an exponential time, in that as the number of states in the United States grows, the longer it takes to check that these super United States are not equal to other super United States. An exponential curve.
Right.
What recently happened at the end of last year, there was a formal proof of a pseudo-polynomial time algorithm. So it wasn't quite polynomial time, but it was a very, very close. It was approximately polynomial time. It was a mathematical proof that you could solve these graph isomorphism problems quite quickly, or a fair bit quicker than we had before. And I think those are the types of things going forward that will win Turing Awards, is not necessarily these revisions in like how the Intel CPU architecture works, or a slight compiler increase, but it's going to be these more profound theory works that will be receiving Turing Awards. I want to look up the list of Turing Award winners now. Should have done that.
Oh.
Award. Yeah, I don't know. Turing Awards are cool, but I don't understand most of why people have received them, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Well, see, this is my point. I think it's also... Computer science is a particularly weird field just because there is probably, I would say, more of a schism between the academic and the... I don't know what the word is. Real programmers, maybe?
Industry is probably the word.
No, not even necessarily industry, though, because there are plenty of people that are very, very smart and very, very smart programmers that are not. Industry has context around. Industry implies like enterprise software solutions.
I mean, yeah, I guess business.
No, not even that, because I wouldn't consider Richard Stallman to be an industry or a business programmer.
Okay. Yeah. There's the math and there's the practical application of the math.
Well, yes. I mean, there's I guess if I had to say something, I'd probably say there's the academic approach to computer science and there's the pragmatic approach to computer science.
Okay.
The only reason I hesitate to do that is because I think that it implies that academia is not practical in any way. Like by making that distinction, it's perhaps unfair to the academics.
Yeah.
But I think that it's interesting that there is such a split that things like the ACM I would say are even unknown to a very large number of software developers and are irrelevant to most of them.
So, I mean, the real reason I know a lot about, like, I know what the graph isomorphism problem is off the top of my head, is that a while back, I learned of this little thing called the Millennium Prize, which is a set of 7 problems that if you solve them, any one of them, they're all worth $1 million.
So in 980 some years.
Yes, no, it was termed the Millennium Prize because it was at the turn of the millennium, back in 2000, around 2000, that decided that here are 7 problems that we want solutions to. Here's $1 million for each of them. Mm-hmm. Whoever solves it gets this $1 million. And one of them is this problem known as P equals NP, or P versus NP. And so I spent quite a lot of time, and I actually went and I took a class at my university, specifically because I was very interested in trying to win this Millennium Prize, which it's this, as we were talking momentarily ago about the graph isomorphism problem, that solving that is an exponential algorithm. So, it's 2 to the n or whatever it may actually be, because it takes an exponential amount of time to prove if those 2 graphs are equivalent to each other. Mm-hmm. However, there are other classes of problems that can run in polynomial time. And a polynomial is just from like math class in high school, 2x squared plus 5x minus 5. And that would classify a polynomial runtime of an application. What is Kevin laughing about?
I'm sorry. The translating of complicated things into, like math class, like the polynomial, like, because that's a word that people also use all the time now. Like, we're just, like, we're using obscure things, but explaining them in probably equally obscure things. I would imagine, if I went home and I asked, my mom would probably know what a polynomial was. I don't think my dad would. I'm sure they'd know the term. They'd recognize the term, but they'd have to go like, wait, what was that again? I don't it hasn't been relevant. That could be completely unfair. But I think for many parents, that would probably be true.
Maybe I'm going to say that my viewpoint is probably biased.
Well, everybody's viewpoint is biased. That's why we get one.
No, because everyone in my family would know what a polynomial is. Perhaps my grandfather. My parents are teachers. My grandmother's a teacher, and my other grandmother is quite a smart lady. So, I'm fairly certain that I know that everyone in my immediate family would be able to. How do you explain a polynomial then from a more subjective place?
I think I would just simplify it even more. There are some problems that become really, really, really hard to solve as for which figuring out the solution takes a ridiculously long time as the problem gets harder. And then there's some problems for which the time that it takes to figure out becomes pretty much infinite as the problem gets harder.
Yeah. Okay.
Granted, yes, I'm vastly oversimplifying more than you, and I'm sure that irks you a little bit because I've
no, it's interesting. It's just at what point does the oversimplification make the statement worthless? I guess.
Now we're getting to Richard Feynman territory.
Yeah.
No, I refuse to give you an analogy because an analogy is not true.
Right. There can be some truth, extracted from an analogy, but. Okay. Anyway,
this is the academics versus the pragmatists. I'm much more comfortable saying, here's something for which the example works given what you want to know about the problem and totally isn't accurate if you were to try and use this in other situations. You're like, no, we should not. Nah, this is you're the academic here, Alex. I am the cowboy coder, just writing stuff, irritating all those academics and.
I want to revisit this in like 5 years and see how much of what I think of myself. The point is, P versus NP is basically that you have you actually have a whole bunch of different subclasses of problems, but there are 2 subclasses of computer problems that you're thinking about, and that's polynomial and non-polynomial, P and NP. NP or non-polynomial take a lot longer to complete, and polynomial are much more easily solved problems, so they complete much quicker. Mm-hmm. And the question is, can you write polynomial solutions, or very easy to solve solutions for all of the problems in NP? And therefore, all problems in NP are, solvable to some quickly answered, solution, or relatively quickly answered solution. And that has like huge problems in or implications for basically everything in computers. Like, a lot of encryption is based on NP algorithms that is assumed that it would take you millions and millions of years to try every possible password,
yes.
If your password is long enough. But if there was a P solution, a polynomial time solution, then these encryption algorithms could be broken much more quickly, and there's certainly different speeds of polynomial. So not all polynomial applications can get solved at the same time. So it might not be that horrible. The point of the matter is that it's a very important problem whether or not P is in fact equal to NP, and it's worth $1 million.
Right.
And I took a class in this, and I've spent a lot of time reading over different polynomial and non-polynomial algorithms because of it. Because I want to win that $1 million. But it just for reference, it's mostly believed that P does not equal NP.
Right. That there are certain problems for which there will never be a particularly fast solution.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were trying to put a puzzle together, and you had to put it together upside down.
What?
That's an example of an NP hard problem. Is that basically you have to try every combination of puzzle piece with every other combination of puzzle piece if they're all face down, and you're trying to put the puzzle together.
I thought you were just looking at the puzzle from the picture was upside down. I was like, what?
No. This is kind of how encryption works. Is that basically you're trying to put a puzzle together and all the puzzle pieces are upside down. Is that basically all that you can do is try every possible combination of every piece with another until it works, and you may get a fair amount of the way there and go, nope, none of this is going to work. When you flip the picture up, now you have this sort of heuristic approach, and you go, okay, we can, you have a particular algorithm, a particular strategy for solving the problem that you can use that means that it's not going to take you an infinitely long amount of time as the number of puzzle pieces go up.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah. And it can't just be solved by tilting your head upside down.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I should have clarified. Face down is not fine. Fine, Alex.
I was just like very confused as how that would possibly be an NP problem. But yeah, absolutely. All right, feel free to cut all that.
Okay, so speaking of AI.
Okay.
Alex, Go.
Okay, you want to play a game of Go, Kevin?
I played a game of Go maybe once in my life, and I couldn't figure it out.
I have never played a full game because the AI I was trying to play against kept like getting into an infinite loop and dying.
Did you write this AI, Alex?
I did not. I just found what looked to be a pretty reputable online site that you can play versus a computer or play against your friends. And I'd get like halfway through a game and it would be like waiting, and then like 15 minutes later the game would time out and end.
Well, so this actually very well relates to our subject, in that the game of chess is a really cool game. I like chess.
It is.
I fancy myself a connoisseur of the game of chess. Chess is a very difficult problem to solve computationally, because what you've got to do is try every move, and then try every opponent's move for all of those moves, and then try all of your moves for those moves, until you finally go, okay, well then the game's over, so that move was a good one, and then backtrack and go, okay, well then the game, this chain allows me to win, or allows my opponent to win, therefore it's bad, and you kind of score those all up.
And if you can build that chain for every beginning move, the game of chess would be considered solved.
Yes.
And
to make it very, very boring.
Yeah, because you could predict who was going to win based on whoever got to go first.
Yes, and in fact, it's actually kind of an interesting problem in practice because of the way that grandmaster scores are handled, or well, tournament scores are handled at the grandmaster level. Or, sorry, not at the. Basically, when they're doing when they're doing quick bullet matches, or a lot of times, basically when they're trying to resolve ties at the end of these games, that basically, you're down to two people, trying to finish off and figure out who's the champion of this particular tournament. And what'll often happen, just if they've run out of, they'll go from regular chess to like blitz and to bullet, which is 1 minute time increments. And then finally they go, okay, we need to have some sort of system that's not going to take a theoretically infinite amount of time. What'll happen is that one player will play as white, the other person will play as black. If the player playing the black pieces draws, then the player playing the black pieces wins. Because the assumption is that white has an advantage.
Yeah, because it gets to go first.
Right, and that getting to go first does constitute a theoretically winning position. If you were ever to figure out that chess is theoretically drawn, that'd probably change. That basically a draw is a draw, period.
Yeah.
Basically if they tie, then it's not, oh, well, the defending player, this idea of the attacking player and the defending player, it could in fact be the case that if you had perfect knowledge about chess, that the player who goes second automatically wins. Like, that could be true.
And that's actually a feature of Go as well. In Go, oddly enough, the black player goes first and the white player goes second. But the white player gets what's known as a komi, which is a 5 or a 6.5 point bonus for going second. So in Go, it's assumed that the player going first has the advantage, and therefore the player going second has a point bonus.
Right. And so this is an assumption, and to be honest, it's probably true. But we don't know.
Maybe.
Because we can't solve these things. And in fact, we haven't solved chess. What we have done with chess, quite a while ago, is gotten computers good enough that basically they can beat anybody.
Yeah.
They can't beat a computer and a person together. A computer plus a person generally beats out a computer alone. Just pretty impressive.
The computer displays, like possible moves or possible good moves, and then the human selects the final move to make.
Well, it's generally more collaborative than that. Is that basically the human just gets to evaluate the position with the engine. So he can in fact say, look at this, restrict what you're looking at to this particular chain of moves. Or it may just say, give me the options. Okay, now evaluate this line. This one looks promising, or that sort of thing. Generally, a grandmaster plus a computer working together beat a computer on its own. Even a lower ranked computer plus a person generally do far better than a computer, which is interesting.
Checkers, on the other hand, has been solved, and therefore it's a pointless game to play because if you've memorized the whole table like a computer has,
right,
then you can predict who's going to win based on the opening move.
The same is true, of course, with tic-tac-toe as well. That is one where humans can actually kind of reasonably memorize all of the starting positions. But, the actual news that we're getting to here is Go and Google. Whose name was inspired, in fact, by Go. Little known trivia fact for you.
No, wait, was it? I thought it was Google, like the number.
Alex, you always ruin my comedic bits.
Wait, how is that a comedic bit?
Because it's.
I thought you were being serious.
Google has made a Go computer
that is better than a good player. They haven't tested it against the best player yet, but they have played it against at least some good Go players, and the computer has won 5 games out of 5 thus far. They also played it against another previously the best known Go AI, and it won 199 out of 200 games. So they're pretty sure they have the new best Go AI, and that it is finally better than really good humans.
Mm-hmm. Not necessarily definitive. Well, and we should also mention, even the best chess engines will sometimes draw against grandmasters.
Yeah. They don't often lose,
They
though, right?
I think it. I mean, I think it occasionally will happen. They'll lose like one. I mean, they don't lose matches, but they'll lose. They'll maybe lose a game. Generally, though, it's draws. Very, very good grandmasters can often pull off a draw. Against.
There's a lot of draws that can happen in chess.
Right.
I mean, draw is a very common occurrence against good players.
I mean, part of the thing is also for, there are a lot of, in particular in chess, there are a lot of moves that you can make that basically, you can go, I'm in a winning position, but I'm playing against a computer, so I'm just going to sacrifice a bunch of material for a perpetual check that's going to guarantee me a draw, or something stupid like that. Basically, you can force your way into a draw by basically having a boring game.
So it's becoming analysis. There was back in the, what was it, the 70s or 80s, Deeper Blue? I think it was Deep Blue.
I'm pretty sure this is in my lifetime.
Really? It was before mine.
96, Alex.
What? Okay, so I guess I was alive.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. Wow.
So, Deep Blue won its first game in 96. However, Kasparov won the tournament that year because they played 6 games.
So it wasn't until 97.
97, Deep Blue won.
Right.
Kasparov
accused
IBM of cheating. At this point, though, it's hands down. It would never be that close anymore.
We should probably explain what Deep Blue is. So back in apparently the mid-90s, IBM built a computer they called Deep Blue.
I feel bad because I've called you out for making like references people won't understand. I'm like, what are you talking? Deep Blue. Everybody knows Deep Blue. That was just like a few years ago. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I legitimately thought it was in the 80s. So yeah, back in the 90s, IBM built a chess-playing computer that they called Deep Blue. They entered it in a chess tournament. It lost the first time round, and then in a rematch in 97, it was the first computer to ever win a chess tournament against a grandmaster.
No.
And
sorry. Yes. Well, it's also, it didn't just enter a tournament. Like this was a tournament with the world champion of chess. It was a match against. So it's not like I'm just gonna play in the tournament with all the other noobs, like, or even just random grandmasters. This was against Kasparov, who was the reigning world champion at the time.
Yeah. So he was considered to be the best player of chess in the entire world.
Yes.
At the time. Google has announced that in March, its Go AI will be facing the Go world champion. So the player who is considered the best player of Go in the world will be facing off in March of 2016 versus its AI. And we'll see who comes out on top.
Alex, we've lost tic-tac-toe, we've lost checkers, we've lost chess, we may be losing Go, we've lost Jeopardy.
I'm pretty sure we're going to lose everything.
I'm going to guess the Wheel of Fortune, a computer would probably be pretty good at that one too.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I could write something that would beat out people at Wheel of Fortune. Like, this is not a hard problem.
Yeah.
What do we have left, Alex? What are humans going to be able to do? Like Family Feud? Like, is that?
I'd like to see a computer beat me at a 50-meter jump.
I'm pretty sure they could pull that off.
A robot could, but not a computer.
We're devolving into semantic arguments.
I don't care. It's the only thing we have left, Kevin. They've taken it all.
So yes, predictions. Is the Go AI going to get the job done? Yeah.
I'm hoping that there's a live stream. Kevin, we should sign up to be the commentators on the live stream.
We don't know anything about the game.
I played at least like 3 half games before the system crashed. I want the two of us to play a game of Go, Kevin.
I played people at some point. Yeah, it did not go well. I don't know. Maybe we'll revisit the game. We should try that out.
I think it would be great. You should tell us in an iTunes review whether or not we should have a Twitch stream of us playing Go.
You're just okay. So like I mentioned it once, and now this is like your mission. Like I need to figure out a way to remind people about. The iTunes reviews.
If I actually wanted iTunes reviews, it's easy enough to just automate that. That's no fun.
It'd be equally easy to de-automate that too. What's particularly interesting, though, is that this is actually using mainly neural nets, and it's using, in particular, what's called deep learning. Yeah. So the idea of a neural net, which I admittedly don't understand. I mean, I understand neural net. I don't understand deep learning entirely.
I'm not certain most people understand what a neural net does. And most people don't understand the neural nets that they make, like how they would work.
Well, so the idea is that basically you hook up a whole bunch of inputs, and you have a whole bunch of outputs. And a very primitive neural net says, all right, we're just going to set up a bunch of connections between these inputs and the outputs. If we imagine something that just has kind of two layers, and then we say, all right, if you get a signal to this input, you should send a small amount of signal to this output. And that output goes, if I got enough total signal, then I'm going to fire my output. Yep. That's the basis of neural nets. And as you make it more and more complex, you start to add in various layers. So that if we have, our inputs that come in, they go to another set that then go, I didn't get enough, or I did get enough, so I'm going to throw out new stuff. And they do that over and over through all of these different chains until eventually they get to the outputs and they do stuff. And the idea is that you basically just throw examples at this neural net. So here's what the input is and what the output is, and you do that over and over so it figures out what those tuning values are, and eventually it just becomes a super genius. What I understand with deep learning is that in addition to having those layers, you also let the thing feed back in its output into its input again in some fashion.
That sounds right. It's very complicated.
You're the academic here. I'm going to have to ask. You are of our podcast, Alex. I'm proud to say that you are the expert. You are a resident expert in neural nets and deep learning.
Okay, I should email my AI professor.
Let him know you've made it, baby.
Yeah. I'd be like, hey, remember me from last semester?
Well, guess what?
I'm in charge of the AI portion of a podcast. So I genuinely don't know much about deep learning. I know a little bit about neural networks, and your explanation of that is reasonably correct, in that I don't have anything to really say about it.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't understand.
So by reasonably
Google's...
correct, you mean I didn't say enough that you could refute what I'm saying.
Yes, correct.
I didn't say enough to explain what's going on, but I didn't say quite enough to be wrong.
Yeah, you walked that line very nicely.
This is a goal. This is one of my goals.
Deep learning, all I know is that it finds eyes in a lot of things. Google released this deep learning dream thing a while back, where you could have it look at pictures and dream about them, and all it did was just add a whole bunch of eyes everywhere, and it was creepy.
Okay. So I think what we can conclude is that deep learning is Cthulhu.
Sure.
All right.
I guess. I can't refute that. I don't know enough about deep learning to refute that.
But do you know enough about Cthulhu? That's really
I know nothing about Cthulhu.
Oh, man. You would. I think you would enjoy reading Lovecraft.
I'm not a big horror person.
I'm not a horror person. It's different. It's enjoyable. Okay. I think you'd enjoy it.
A Lovecraftian nightmare.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know if I want to be trapped in an existential nightmare, Kevin. Doesn't sound like fun way to spend a Saturday night to me.
Alex, you are trapped in an existential nightmare.
No, I'm not. I'm not Vinny the Vole. I am not Vinny the Vole.
This is what
Kevin.
life is, Alex. It is an existential nightmare.
I'm not Vinny the Vole. I don't have to do this.
So Alex, you wrote down Internet for Ants.
I did.
What are you smoking out there on the West Coast? And can I have some?
No, you can't. I mean, actually, you can, because it's coming to the East Coast, is what I'm talking about. So, coming to my new, next-to-be hometown of Boston, where I will be moving in a couple of months, is this really cool technology that's called millimeter wireless internet, which is why I called it Internet for Ants, because ants are like millimeters long. But so So I'm excited because right now in Boston, even though it's a big like technology center, there is no option for like gigabit internet. I can't like really get fiber. I've been looking at apartments and trying to find like an apartment with like gigabit internet. Couldn't say that word. I've been looking for apartments and I couldn't find one with gigabit internet.
So there is something wrong with housing search engines, Alex. Like I go on to like Zillow every so often. I'm like, I'd like to look at like really cheap houses in areas where houses cost less than like a month's worth of rent. And I look and they're like, oh, it's got like granite countertops and fancy. I'm like, I don't care. Like, does it have a basement and what's the bandwidth? Those are the only two things that matter. Like, I don't care about, oh, look, it's got a walkout garage. Like, I don't. Well, because
Why do you need?
I'm a nerd. I live in basements. This is what I do.
But if you have a whole house, why do you need to be in the basement?
You gotta have a basement, man. Basements are the best.
Oh, whatever. The point of the matter is, I'm super excited because today a company has announced that they're rolling out in Boston as a test drive millimeter wireless internet that can deliver gigabit speeds via their own radio network that they're going to set up. And so it's kind of like a cell phone network, except the frequency of the transmissions are much higher, and therefore that the transmission rate is much higher.
The article doesn't mention them actually launching this thing, that they unveiled it as a technology.
It will start beta testing its network around Boston this summer. Okay. And I signed up, and I plugged in the zip code where I'm going to be living, or want to live.
See, this seems interesting to me because it also says that they're operating in a currently unlicensed wireless band, which to me says the FCC has not said, yes, you can do any of this yet.
Those unlicensed bands are reserved by the FCC that anyone can do things in that band. So you're not guaranteed to have no interference, but you can do what you want in that band. That's what unlicensed bands are.
Huh. Okay.
Which is why I think part of why they're just rolling it out as a trial. I think they'll probably try to license a chunk of that band for themselves so that they can guarantee non-interference. Anyway, it's a very strong likelihood that around the time I'll be moving in, this gigabit wireless thing will start rolling out, and I'll get to have gigabit internet via millimeter wireless signals, and it'll be great. You just stick this, like, I don't know, it looks like, I don't know what it even looks like. It's a tube. It's a big cylinder. Mm-hmm. You stick this cylinder in your window, and it picks up the signals. Their broadcast towers work in over a 2-kilometer radius, so you can cover a good bit of downtown Boston with only a few towers. I did the math because I was curious to see how likely it would be for me to live in an area that would get coverage. And it turns out to cover a fairly high population of Boston requires a very little number of antennas when they have 2-kilometer ranges on them. So I'm pretty hopeful that I might actually have gigabit internet now. Because I was getting a little depressed that I might be stuck with like half a gigabit or something.
Well, I have to say, this is, I think, the first podcast where you've not cut out.
So I'm excited, because maybe I'll get fast internet.
Fast internet is yeah.
And like it wouldn't go out when the power goes out, because unless like the power of the transmitter did.
Right. I found that there are diminishing returns to super fast internet after a certain point. Yep.
I suppose. I what I really want, and I'm a little worried by this, to be honest, is that the upload speed of this thing won't be that fast. Like, yeah, it may give you a gigabit downlink, but you only get like 3 megabits uplink because it's this little wireless transmitter. That has me a little worried and would be, a significant kill for that. Because right now, I mean, I would love to have a gigabit up, and I'd probably be fine with like 20 meg down. The thing is that I understand like there are obviously a lot of people still torrenting or legitimately purchasing stuff and downloading very large files. I'm not one of them. Occasionally I'll watch stuff on Netflix, but even then I'm not particularly bothered if it's not the best quality. I'm perfectly happy with low bitrate, and so much stuff is cacheable now. Yeah, that having an immediate download speed is not hugely critical for me. The big bottleneck for me is just I want to be able to upload very large video files. Yeah.
You know, in a reasonable time frame, and at least in the U.S. it tends to be the case that you do not get upload speed.
I would personally want at least 30 on the downside. I mean, if I could have a symmetric like 50-50, it would probably suffice for just me. I probably won't be living alone in Boston, though, so I'd like, 50-50 times the number of residents in the household, given the type of people that I would most likely be living with.
Right.
So, somewhere in the hundreds would be perhaps ideal, and that's easy enough to come by.
If we continue to have really bad upload and download, then it will encourage people to continue to develop better encoding for things.
We already have H.265.
It's not in practice though.
Yeah,
and there's so many licensing issues with it that I don't know what's ever gonna like. Yes, Netflix will eventually be able to completely leverage it, but I don't know.
Okay, so it's not a tech problem then; it's a legal problem, is what you're saying.
For the most part, yeah. As it probably means that someone else is going to have to come up with some other codec that is as good. At which point they'll go, fine, let's make H.265 a new public standard. Okay, fine.
What about VP8? What's up with VP8?
I have no idea.
I know it's owned by Google, and it'll probably come along with VP9 because VP7 was the older version, and I think there was a VP6.
I don't remember. I don't know. I don't even remember our first vice president. I mean, Adams, wasn't it? VP1.
No, it was Washington. It was Washington and Washington in the beginning. You got a unanimous vote, so they just stuck them in both offices.